fantastic. My name is Susan Curry, and I have the honor of introducing our speakers for tonight. This series, which was the brainchild of Professor Stephen Yale-Loehr and our county historian Carol Cannon, the Constitution series. Actually, the program is titled The Constitution, Know Your Rights series. So I want to say thank you to both of you. It's been a fantastic program. We've had lots of views on our YouTube channel as well. So not only are we having great audiences, but it's reaching a lot of people. Tonight's program will focus on a discussion of the history of immigration to the U.S. and why it has become polarized. Our speakers are Stephen Yale-Loehr, who's a professor of immigration law practice at Cornell Law School, counsel for the firm Miller-Mayer's Immigration Practice Group, and the co-author of the Green Card Stories, which you see the book here on the table. There's a copy in the library. It's a beautiful book. Also joining the discussion will be Tania Penafort. She is now a staff attorney for Journeys and Refugee Services, and she works at the Cornell Law School as well, correct? At the Farm Worker Legal Assistance Clinic.
I did.
That's wonderful. Journeys and Vision, I love, to provide refugees with the resources and support they need to become successful, active, and contributing members of the Western New York community. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our speakers, and thank you so much for coming to this series.
Well, thanks for coming tonight. We're going to try to make this interactive, so if you do have questions, feel free to interrupt us. We do have a presentation, but we want to have lots of time for questions. Also, we have a board up here where people can put Post-its on what country their ancestors came from. So if you want to do that afterwards, fill it in, and then we'll have a memory of this evening. So for tonight, we want to discuss 4 things. What is our current immigration system, and where does it fit in the U.S. Constitution? Then we'll talk about the fact that it's a broken immigration system, and we'll explain why. Then we'll talk about some success stories, and many of the success stories, but not all of them, come from this book called Green Card Stories, which is a book about 50 recent immigrants to the United States. And I always want to leave with a hopeful note, so got some solutions, and we'll walk out of here, and tomorrow the immigration system will be all fixed. But the themes are, it's always been hard to navigate our immigration system. We have the largest and most complex immigration system in the world. As you all know, the system is broken and it's getting worse every day, but some people still manage to navigate their way through the system. Cornell Asylum Clinic, the Cornell Farm Workers Clinic has been successful. Tania and her job at Journeys and Refugee Services have been successful. So with a good attorney, you can be successful in navigating our immigration system. And there are solutions. I mentioned Green Card Stories. Basically, it's 50 stories, 5 continents, 1 America. Basically talking about how people got here, what they did after they got here. Most of the people in the book are not famous, but they're unique in their own way in terms of the hardships they suffered, or their determination to get here, or how they were able to bring their family here after they got here. So copy is in the library, so if you want to look at it afterwards, feel free to check it out. The library always loves people who check out books. Next, let's talk about the Constitution, because this series is about the Constitution. So before, if you came before, we talked about various amendments in the Constitution, various clauses like due process and equal protection. We don't have a provision about immigration in the Constitution. There's nothing that says we will or will not allow people to immigrate to the United States. So what does that mean? Well, if you go back to your high school Constitution days, you may remember that supposedly we have a constitution of a limited government, that what's in the Constitution allows the federal government to control certain things like foreign relations or commerce or taxes, but if it's not in the Constitution, then the rest of that goes back to the states, like the police power, for example. That's regulated at the local level. not at the federal level for the most part. So what does that mean about Constitution? I mean about immigration? Does that mean, for example, that states or localities could regulate immigration? It was a big debate back in the 19th century. And over the time, the U.S. Supreme Court held that immigration is unique because it affects our national sovereignty. It affects our foreign relations. We can't have 50 states with 50 different kinds of immigration and who they will or will not allow. And so generally, the U.S. Supreme Court has held that for the most part, immigration is a federal responsibility, even though it's not mentioned in the Constitution. But there's still plenty of debates today as to what states and localities can do if the federal government refuses to do something or is unable to do something because of Congress. And we'll talk some about that in this thing. For example, Tania, people get work permits. And what does that mean, Tania? And can the state give out a work permit?
No, the state may not give out a work permit. An employment authorization document, or what we commonly refer to as a work permit, allows a person to have the legal authority to be hired in the United States. It will usually come with a term of validity. And so, it's a card that you show to your employer. And I've always wondered if a work permit is a license, and it's a license to work, could a state, is it in the realm of the possibility where a state may regulate a license to work, such as a driver's license?
And this is actually a controversy in California right now. There's debate about whether college students who are undocumented have the right to work with a permit issued by the state government, and has not been resolved yet. So let's talk next about what is our immigration system. We've had an immigration system for over 200 years. It's the largest system in the world. And Tania, I want you to bring through some of the details of that.
Thank you, Steve. And I'd like to just start by taking a brief second to reiterate my gratitude for joining you all today and spending the evening with you talking about these issues. I am a new practicing attorney, and so I'm by no means an expert, but when big minds ask me to participate, out of tremendous respect, I couldn't say no. So back to the immigration system. The big picture is that it is a Byzantine system. Congress has not legislated on the Immigration and Nationality Act in almost 30 years. Yet immigration policy changes from one administration to the next. So you have the current administration working furiously to overturn programs that the previous administration passed. And this not only causes whiplash, but as we'll have the chance to discuss further, it can mean dramatic changes in people's right to live and work and feel safe here. Also, we have the United States Citizenship Immigration Services, which adjudicates applications for various immigration benefits. And I have heard other attorneys describe it as a third world level system in a modern society. What they're referring to are the many inefficiencies and mistakes that make this a very cumbersome system to deal with. And now, as far as immigration court, where people are in what we call removal proceedings, I have heard it described as a traffic court with the equivalent of death penalty consequences.
So let's go through some of the categories, and Tanya, why don't you tell us about what you and I call non-immigrants, but for the layperson, they're people who are here temporarily. But there are millions of people here who come on various temporary visas.
Right, so we're looking at this slide and we're starting at the bottom. Non-immigrants, what do we mean? Think tourists, think students who are here on a student visa. So their duration of stay is limited to a few months. It's typically somewhere between 3 and 6 months. And they must not violate the terms of their stay, meaning that they have to leave when their duration of stay is over. Also, there are restrictions on their ability to work here. So if you've said, you know, United States Consulate, I'd like to apply for a visa because my cousin is having a wedding, you are coming here to go to that wedding. You're not coming here to work.
Oh, yeah?
If you are someone who has been offered a fellowship at Cornell University and you apply for a student visa to come to do your fellowship, you may be able to work, but that work is limited within the parameters of your student visa. Then,
Yeah, green card holders.
next we have what are known as permanent residents or green card holders, and this is what most people want. These are lawful permanent residents who have this legal status for it's an indefinite permission to live and work anywhere in the United States and to be able to travel in and out, as long as the time spent outside of the country is not more than 6 months. However, green card holders are still deportable. And as only U.S. citizens can vote, green card holders cannot vote in U.S. elections. But after about either 3 or 5 years, green card holders can become citizens through what we call naturalization. And that's something that I will talk to you more in depth about later on.
And then we have another category, the gray area at the top, and those are sort of quasi-legal statuses. We call them temporary protected status, deferred action for childhood arrivals, humanitarian parole, etc. They aren't visas. They don't give you a path toward a green card. So they're sort of quasi-legal, and administration can give it out or take it away. So that's sort of an overview. We have a question there. I'll repeat the questions.
Okay, for the permanent residents, the green card holders, you say they can be deported.
Yes.
Are we going to go into detail on that later? Or
We might,
that,
if we have time, we might. I mean, the basic thing is, for example, you commit a crime.
yeah.
If you're a U.S. citizen, you go to jail, you come out. If you're a green card holder, you go to jail, and then after jail, you get put into deportation or removal proceedings to kick you out of the country.
Right. Because some green card holders, I'm understanding, are being detained.
Right.
And they could be deported because...
They may have committed a crime, and there's like 27 different reasons why a green card holder can be deported under the immigration law. Question over here.
Somewhere we can look that up, because I know somebody that just got deported and they were just working, both parents.
Again, the question, were they a green card holder or?
Yes.
Okay. Each case is so complex, you really need to talk to an immigration lawyer. And I apologize for not repeating for the audience. This time, I'll try to repeat the question.
Okay, great. I'm wondering about DACA that came in with the Obama administration. Is that valid for a set period of time? Could that be overturned? What's the story?
We have a whole slide on DACA, so if you still have a question after that, we can ask it then. So a little more depth now about non-immigrants, or people come temporarily. And you call them B2 visas or H-1Bs. The reason they have these funny letters and numbers is where they are listed in the immigration law. But basically it goes all the way from A down to V, and I've categorized them by those kinds of temporary visa holders who can work, and you see them on the screen there. Those who cannot work, And in certain special cases, like international students, where you can't work per se, but after you graduate, you may get special permission to be able to work. So, but all people who come into the United States, even temporarily, have to be screened. They have to have a visa interview at a consular post, make sure they haven't committed a crime or something else that does not prevent them from coming to the U.S.
I have a question about, what was the crew member or crew?
Crew members. Yes, crew members. So for example, say you work on a cruise ship. You come into the United States for shore leave. You know, you have to have a special crew member visa to be able to be here on shore leave. I mean, some of these I don't even list, but they're really interesting. Like, I like the S category. I call them the sneaky snitches, because it's a category whereby if we need to bring you into the United States to testify against a cartel person or whatever, you need a visa to do that. And we have a special S visa just for that. We have an R visa for religious workers who come temporarily to the United States. So basically every kind of person you can think of, we probably have a visa for them. Next, let's talk about green cards. What are the different ways you can get to green cards and how many of them are there? And there are basically four main ways. One is to have a family member sponsor you. One is to have employment person. A third is what I call humanitarian, like asylum or refugee. And fourth is what we call the diversity lottery, because we don't have enough ways, so might as well have a lottery too. And all these categories, for the most part, have numerical limits. So it's not like every family member can immediately come into the United States. And those can cause backlogs. Now, Tania, you went through the immigration process. Which of these four ways did you come into the U.S.?
I did, and so if you'll indulge me, we are now at the storytelling part of our presentation. Slide.
Mm-hmm. Here we are.
So, when I was about 3 years old, I came on a plane as a tourist, or what we learned today is a non-immigrant. I did not go back. I overstayed and became
illegal.
out of status. I grew up in New York City. I went to school in New York City. When I was about 8 years old, my mother married my stepfather, who had entered the United States without authorization. Now, around this time, my stepfather was sponsored by his employer as a skilled worker. He was a cook for a Cuban restaurant. And it was 1995 when we applied. His application was in time approved, and he in turn sponsored my mother and me. And so we were his derivatives. I was very lucky because I was able to adjust my status. After having no status, I was able to apply to become a lawful permanent resident. I had to pay a $1,000 penalty fee because, of course, we overstayed and were here without authorization. My stepfather also had to pay because he had not been properly admitted into the United States, having had crossed the border without authorization. I'm incredibly lucky because the legal pathway that I was able to benefit from is not something that's available to most people today.
Not available today. It was sort of a one-time, pay $1,000 penalty, all is forgiven, you can get a green card.
So I told you I was really young when all of this happened. So in preparation for this presentation, I did a little bit of digging. And I learned that my stepfather's work permit was approved in 1999, and then in 2002, I got a work permit, but still not a green card holder. And of course, this was a small win, or perhaps a big win, you know, after having worked student internships and not being able to get paid for the work I was doing. When I finally got my work permit and received compensation for my work, it was a big deal. But it wasn't until June 2006, actually, that I became a lawful permanent resident. And at that time, I was an undergraduate student at Cornell University. So from about 1995, when we applied, until I got my green card in 2006, even though I was in process, I strongly identified with dreamers, other students who called themselves this name. And so, you know, remember we said that once you become a green card holder, in my case, after 5 years, I was allowed to apply to become a citizen. So I could have done that in 2011. However, I was a very idealistic college student, quite the little rebel, I might add. And so out of solidarity with dreamers, you know, this included cousins of mine, peers who I went to lobby Congress to pass what was known as the DREAM Act. I did not apply for citizenship. You know, I wondered what was so special about me. Why was I so lucky? Why can I become legal and people who are just as deserving as I am or more deserving don't have a pathway? But finally, and before my green card expired, which, by the way, the green card has a term of 10 years. Not that your status ends, but the physical card, the green card, has to be renewed if you don't choose to become a citizen, if you don't choose to apply to become a citizen. And so my green card was about to expire, and on my mother's command, I applied for citizenship. I went to Catholic Charities. I know some of you know Catholic Charities. And I applied with the help of Sue Chafee, who's still today the director of the Immigrant Services Program. It was October 2014, and I filled out the long form application for naturalization. And then I was interviewed in January of 2015 in near Albany in Latham, New York, and guess what? I passed the English test and the civics test, but I don't become a citizen until you get a final approval and you go to an oath ceremony. And by the way, you can be denied right up until that day. But as you can clearly see, I went to my ceremony in Broome County Supreme Court on February 20th, 2015, and I was given this certificate of naturalization, which I don't mind passing around.
No. It's too precious to pass around.
It's not the real one, don't worry. It's just a copy.
Okay.
It's just a copy, yes. I like show and tell. So I was presented with the certificate. I was administered the oath. It was such a proud day for myself and my family 10 years ago by now. And as I reflect back, I am moved by a letter from then President Obama that accompanied my certificate. And if you'll allow me just briefly, it starts, "Dear fellow American, this great nation is now your nation. You share in its privileges and responsibilities." And the judge in Broome County, Binghamton Supreme Court echoed this and added, "Our enemies are now your enemies." And I'm waiting for him to say, "And our national debt is now your national debt." He did not say that. But coming back to the letter, it says, "Since our founding generations of immigrants have come to this country full of hope for a brighter future, and they have made sacrifices in order to pass that legacy on to their children and grandchildren. This is the price and the promise of citizenship. You are now part of this precious history, and you serve as an inspiration to those who will come after you."
So let's stop there for now.
Sure.
Okay.
So one comment on that?
Go ahead, question?
Actually, a comment. I don't know if you saw it, but Tompkins County has been ordered to stop naturalization services.
Yes.
So it's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services on Thursday canceled all local Tompkins County scheduled naturalization ceremonies and announced that none would be held until further notice.
Yeah, that's not, the question was, or the comment was that the county clerk is no longer allowed, at least temporarily, to schedule judicial naturalization ceremonies. It's not limited to Tompkins County, it's throughout upstate New York. And I'm trying to determine whether it's a nationwide policy. Nobody's quite clear why it came down. The original USCIS email said that it was because of the shutdown, but this came down after the shutdown ended. But people can still become naturalized, they just do it administratively at a USCIS office. They have to schedule that. So it doesn't have the pomp and the circumstance of having a judge, say all these wonderful things. So just to sort of wrap up on this part, so that's a copy of a green card up there on the screen. It's not actually green anymore, even though people still call it a green card. And then we wanted to talk about, how different ways that people got green cards. This person, Cesar Domico, came from Colombia. He was a magician, and he's in the Green Card Stories book. And he spoke out both against right-wing paramilitaries and left-wing guerrillas, and because of that, he was persecuted. He managed to come to the United States and apply for asylum, and he got asylum. Now, this was several years ago. Tania, if he came now to your office to apply for asylum, would he be able to get it, and how long would it take?
So, one of the first things we need to understand is how he came.
He came legally.
He came, okay, has he been served with a notice to appear in court?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that means he is in the defensive posture or is in a removal proceeding and must apply for asylum in court in front of a judge. This is not easy to win because, you have the government and their attorney trying to deport you or get you deported. And it's also not easy today because you have judges who are, they are under a lot of pressure under this administration as employees of the EOIR agency to decide cases quickly. However, it's taking on average about a year and a half to schedule a hearing, a merits hearing in front of a judge. And it's a very, if you do not have an attorney, it's very difficult to win. It's almost like 17% without an attorney. With an attorney, you're more likely, it could be 60%.
And if it's your client, then it's 100%.
Thank you for that confidence. However, one of the things we are seeing under this administration is early pre-termission of applications.
Claiming that because the application was not facially approvable on its face or it lacks some information, we don't even need to have an individual hearing. We can just decide without a hearing, and that's happening more and more often. I saw a hand up, yes.
Yes. A few slides back, you showed the quotas for people coming in under the different claims. Are those decided by the administration?
That's a good question. Question is, are there quotas, and if so, who decides those quotas? Most of these are decided by Congress as part of our immigration law. So the numbers for family-sponsored, employment-based, forever, those have not changed since 1990. Humanitarian, I put both asylum and refugees in that category. Asylum does not have a quota. Refugees, Congress talks to the president every year, and they decide how many refugees to admit. This year, they decided to admit just 7,500 refugees, whereas in the last year of the Biden administration, they admitted 125,000 refugees. The diversity lottery is capped at 50,000 a year. So that's one person who got a green card through asylum. Here's another employment-based person. She came temporarily to New Hampshire and liked it and was able to have her employer petition for her. I see a hand up in the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarifying comment regarding the ceremony on pause. The county had finished their ceremonies and they were scheduling for next year.
This is another example, someone who came in through the diversity lottery from Japan. So there are a variety of ways that people come into the United States. And as Tania alluded to, after the green card process, the last step in the process is naturalization. And over 650,000 people a year go through the naturalization process. But as you can see from all these various steps, it can take a very long time. I recently talked to a student from India who's now a U.S. citizen, but he started the process 22 years ago. First as a foreign student, then working temporarily after he graduated, and having his employer sponsor him for a temporary visa, then getting the green card, then waiting for naturalization. So patience is not just a virtue, it's required in our system. Yeah.
What does diversity lottery mean exactly?
Diversity lottery is, certain countries have a lot of immigrants to the United States every year. China, Mexico, Philippines, etc. And so Congress, in its infinite wisdom in 1990, says we ought to give a shot to people who don't come from one of these 8 or 10 countries. And if you don't come from those countries, then we'll have a lottery of 50,000 green cards a year, and you're eligible to apply. And as I used to tell Cornell students when I did talks like this, about 12 million people a year apply for this lottery system. And that sounds pretty bad. But actually your odds of winning the green card lottery are better than winning the New York State lottery, so you might as well do it. Okay, so we've talked about the fact that some of these categories do have limits. And that can really slow down the process of actually getting a green card because of these limits. If you think of an airplane, for example, and it can only hold, 300 people, and if there are 500 people who want to get on the plane, the last 200 have to wait. And so we have a backlog waiting system, and what the State Department does every month, they put out something called the Visa Bulletin that says, for this category, here's what the backlogs are. And sometimes, it's for some countries, the backlog is worse than for other countries. So this is an example of this month's Visa Bulletin for the family-based green card applicants. So F1, for example, are unmarried sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. And we only allow 23,000 people a year to get green card that way, so we have a backlog. So you see, for most countries, it is 2016. So you would have had to apply back in 2016 to get one of those kinds of green cards today. If you skip down to F4, that's the family fourth preference. That's for brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. 65,000 people a year. That sounds like a lot, but so many people have tried to get green cards in that category that, for example, 17-year backlog, if I do my math correct, 2008, so it's a 17-year backlog to get a green card in that category. So you could be waiting patiently all that time, and your green card number just isn't coming up yet. We have similar backlogs in the employment-based categories. C, it means current. There is no backlog. But you see, for example, the second category for India, April of 2013. So these are people who have advanced degrees, you know, MDs, MBAs, JDs, etc. These are the kind of people, you know, most employers want, that we want, the best and the brightest. But say you're from India and you're a doctor and we want to work in a rural area of New York State. Right now the backlog is at April of 2013, 12 years backlogged. So in that poor hospital in Watertown or wherever in New York State is going to have to wait 12 years before that doctor can finally come to the United States.
And Steve, if we stay here for just a second,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about some of my clients. So as you know, my organization mainly works on humanitarian cases. And one example of that is the special immigrant juvenile status visas. Has anybody here heard or have worked or know someone who benefited from that or is in process?
I guess not.
Maybe, yeah, one person. So it's a humanitarian status that provides protection and a pathway to lawful permanent residence to immigrant children. They have to be younger than 21 years of age, and they have to show that they have been abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both parents, and where a state court determines that it is not in their best interest to return to their home of origin, their country of origin. Well, youth who is approved what we call a SIDGE application can apply for a green card once a visa is immediately available. And what they apply under is this fourth category in this employment-based chart. Don't ask me why, it's just how they wrote the law. But what you have as a result, if you look at that fourth category, what you have is that even if your application with USCIS, that's who you send the application to, has been approved, you are waiting. You're waiting for a visa to be available to you. And as Steve explained, there are numerical limitations on each of the categories, and there are also limitations on per country, per year. So today, if I had a client who wants to adjust, they would have to have waited 5 years and 5 months to apply for a green card based on the July 2020 date.
I have a question.
Sure.
If you're in the process of trying to get a green card like that, but you're undocumented currently and you get detained, does that jeopardize your status, your
Yes.
ability to
The question is, if you're undocumented, but you're in the process of getting a green card, any of these kinds of green cards, but you don't have it yet, can you get picked up by immigration and can you be deported? And unfortunately, the answer is yes.
No, that's not my question. My question is, will it jeopardize your visa, your green card application?
Probably because you'll be deported, so you won't be able to get the green card. Question?
What's the first and the fifth that are current?
The first is what we call extraordinary ability, your Einsteins, your Barishnikovs, those kinds of people. Not too many people qualified, so that's why there's not really a backlog. The fifth is for investors. If you invest $1 million in the U.S. and that investment creates at least 10 jobs for U.S. workers, that's another way to get a green card. So, got lots of different ways, yes.
If you marry an American citizen, what's the backlog for getting citizenship then?
Well, that's a good question. There is no category, there's no backlog per se. We don't have numerical limits on the number of people who can get a green card based on marriage, but there are processing times, and it takes a while to get a green card based on marriage to a U.S. citizen. And if you're in that process and you're just waiting for the interview and you're undocumented, you could get picked up and detained and deported.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, because I know you're all here because you care and you want to know, maybe you're wondering how you can help or what you can do. So if the SIDGE issue that I talked about is an issue that is near and dear to your heart, there is a bill to eliminate the employment-based visa cap for these juveniles, and it's called the Protect Vulnerable Immigrant Youth Act. You can write to your congressman to voice your support for that act.
I'm sure they'll act on it quickly. So we've seen that we've got complexities in terms of numbers. We also have complexities in terms of the number of agencies that deal with immigration. And Tania, why don't you walk us through those?
That's right. So what you're seeing on the screen is Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, Department of Labor. The Department of Homeland Security it houses the Department of State, Department of Labor, Human and Health Services. They're all involved in how people can get a green card. And what is so complicated is that you can have, the Department of State issue a visa, and so someone may come with a green card, and then at the port of entry, a Customs and Border Protection agent may review and evaluate this person and deny their admission. So, you may be wondering, does that really happen? And unfortunately, it can and it does happen.
Great. So, because of our broken immigration system, employers cannot hire the foreign talent they want. I mentioned limits on the green cards. There's also limits in some of the temporary visa categories. And a common example is in the H-1B category. These are people who have college degrees. They have to work in a job that requires that college degree, and employers have to want to hire them. Unfortunately, we have a limit of 85,000 H-1Bs that we can hand out each year, and many more employers file petitions than the 85,000, so the immigration agency has to hold a lottery to determine which employers can actually file the petition in the first place. And last year, only about 1 out of 3 employers were able to survive the H-1B gauntlet. In some industries, employers can't find enough U.S. workers. For example, over half of all farm workers in the United States are undocumented, but farmers need them. But they're undocumented, so they're at risk of getting picked up and put into deportation proceedings. And we've got problems in our immigration court system too, right, Tania?
That's right. So I mentioned earlier that there just aren't enough immigration judges. And under this administration, there have been firings and resignations of immigration judges. My understanding is that there are over 3 million immigration cases in immigration court right now, and that's what leads to this backlog where people are waiting for 18 months or longer to have a hearing with the judge.
And they're sometimes detained during that time.
at great expense to all of us.
So, Congress has tried to reform our immigration system. Immigration reform bills are introduced every year. Congress did get close in 2013 when the U.S. Senate passed a 1,200-page bill. I'm sure you all wanted to read it when it got passed. But it failed in the House of Representatives. So because Congress couldn't get its act together, various presidents have tried to do things administratively using presidential power. And Tania, why don't you talk to us about the one that you're most familiar with?
Yes, and so somebody asked about this, the DACA program, or the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So, not everybody could benefit from this. You had to show that this was something, let me start by saying that President Obama used his administrative power in 2012 to pass this program known as DACA. You had to show that you have been continuously residing in the United States since June 15, 2007, be under 31 on June 15, 2012, when it was passed. You had to have entered before the age of 16, be in school, have graduated, or have a GED, or have had been honorably discharged from the military, and show that you did not have any disqualifying criminal record history. So, of course, there is litigation over whether President Obama overstepped his authority, his executive authority. And fast forward to 2021, a Texas judge ruled that the 2012 DACA program was unlawful. So that meant is that no more initial applications are allowed. Then under President Biden in 2022, he tried to save DACA by following the administrative law process for DACA to become codified in as a federal regulation. However, in September of 2023, the Texas district judge found that that rule formalizing DACA was unlawful. And recently, what you had was the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal agree with that district court judge, saying yes, it's unlawful. However, the order limited the ruling to Texas. So what that means, it gets a little complicated, but for now, initial applications are not allowed still, right? Remember, because in 2021, no more applications are allowed, but renewal. So if you were able to get your application in, you can renew that application and your work permit.
So about 500,000 people have this DACA status. It doesn't make them legal, not a path to citizenship. It's just simply a temporary reprieve from deportation, and they're very concerned about what's going to happen, either in the courts or through Congress. I'll skip that slide, and let's go to executive orders. So Tania, has President Trump used many executive orders on immigration?
It's been a blitzkrieg, and all I'm going to say is I feel very much like Rose from the Titanic when I say it's been 84 years. It's only been 1 year, but that I've been in at my organization Journeys and and working in these issues. But yes, there have been executive orders related to border security, interior immigration enforcement, which we'll talk about more if we have the chance, the travel bans, mass deportations, Asylum restrictions and H-1B program known as is that the gold card?
No, that's
No.
a fee, $100,000 fee just to apply for an H-1B work
for
visa. So
correcting
an
me.
employer has to pay an extra $100,000 to be able to sponsor a worker. Okay, so let's start talking about some of these. Increased enforcement at the border. As you may know, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in July, and it authorized billions of dollars for additional border security. Effectively, the border has been shut down. People cannot get across the border, and it's being litigated now, but that's the problem at the border. And Tanya, why don't you talk about some of the interior enforcement efforts that you've seen?
Yes, so this has been very much in the news. It has also been something that our clients are very afraid of. The increase, the beefing up of enforcement protection in the interior. No longer are churches safe, no longer are schools safe, hospitals, community spaces. You are seeing agents who are masked effectively kidnap people. And what I want to mention too is that not only is this happening because you have, a president who has set an expectation of 3,000 arrests, detentions a day. But you are also seeing some local counties make use of what is known as a 287G agreement. This agreement exists in Broome County in Binghamton, where we also have an office. What it does is it turns local police into arm extensions of ICE and authorizes ICE to give state and local law enforcement officers the authority to carry out enforcement.
So if they see somebody there, runs a red light, and they say, determine that person is not here legally, they can turn them over to ICE to put them into deportation proceedings.
Yes. And we have Broome County Sheriff Fred Ashcar to thank for signing one such agreement on March 10th, 2025 this year. If this is an issue that you want to challenge, there is a bill in state legislature. It's called the New York for All Act, and this legislation would specifically ban state and local law enforcement from entering or continuing these 287G agreements.
Okay. I'm going to skip ahead a lot, I think. Some case examples of people who got green cards before who probably would not be able to get a green card now. Randolph Seeley, I really like this case. He's in the Green Card Stories book. He came into the United States on a tourist visa from Panama, but he didn't know he was illegal. He overstayed. He didn't realize until he applied for college that he was here illegally. And he wanted to become a surgeon, but he had to get a special waiver from deportation, and that waiver doesn't really exist anymore. But now he's a surgeon in Connecticut. I like this one too as well. Nellie Boyette was an undocumented immigrant who worked at a flea market in Florida. Then she met Jeff, who is now her husband. He worked at the flea market too. They fell in love, they get married, and so because it's a marriage to a U.S. citizen, you would think that the case would have gone through very quickly, but they suspected that really they married for her to get a green card, not because they fell in love. It took them 4 years before they finally got the green card. Now they work together at the flea market, and they've got an expanded two-person stall. They work together. Question there in the back.
Yeah, I'm confused about what, if you serve in the U.S. military. I'm seeing that people have served and then were medaled and then are being deported. Can you explain that?
Yes, we had a special program called the MAVNI program, Military Accession for Vital Interests in the National Defense, that allowed people to serve in the military, and that would give them a path to citizenship. But that was abandoned by this administration, and now people who serve in the military who lack immigration status can be deported even though they have served in the military. So let's talk quickly about temporary protected status. Oh, question in the back, yes.
We have a question from the online stream. I'm going to read this and hopefully not make a mistake. Please discuss out-of-country wait times for spousal applicants for permanent residency for those with no status who have been here 10 years and those who have been here more than 10 years without status.
Okay, that gets into one of the other complications of our system is if you're out of status, there's a 10-year bar if you ever leave the United States before you can return. So what happens if you marry a U.S. citizen in the United States and you apply for a green card? Well, USCIS can approve the petition, but you have to go back to your home country to actually get the green card. And by doing so, you therefore trigger the 10-year bar, so you have to be separated from your new spouse for 10 years before you can come back to the United States. So we try to make it very hard for people to be able to stay in the United States legally. Another problem is temporary protected status. And why don't you tell the people, Tania, about some of this problems that we're having there?
Yes, okay, temporary protected status. So the Secretary of Homeland Security can designate a foreign country for TPS due to conditions in the country that temporarily prevent the country's nationals from returning safely. So think earthquake, think hurricane, civil war. The United States Citizenship Immigration Services may grant TPS. You have to be already in the United States. And what has been happening under this administration is the termination of, for various countries, of TPS. And so effectively, overnight, people lose their work permit and become at risk of deportation. And what you're seeing is just a list of, just from this year, of the terminations. However, so let me just pause for a second, because even though it's a temporary protection, right? It's up. The protection is up to 18 months. It can then be the country can be redesignated. The person can reapply for temporary protection status, and you have people who have been here since the
1990.
1990.
El Salvador was the first example of temporary protected status. That's when Congress enacted it. So they've been here, 35 yeyears, and now and they may not be able to get a green card because they don't have an employer to sponsor them, or they don't have a family member to sponsor them. But they have had TPS so they can work legally. Now it's being terminated, and we're telling these people you have to go back to a country that you haven't been in for 35 years.
That's right, that's right. And we have some breaking news, because just yesterday,
yes,
there's a change for Syria. A federal judge blocked Trump's push to end TPS for Syria, and now more than 6,100 Syrians can keep their legal status.
Okay. And more?
Can we ask?
Yes, question in the back.
Yeah, I need a clarification on the green card, the 10-year bar,
Yes.
because you have to leave the country. When was that initiated?
1996, as part of an overhaul of immigration law then.
Okay, so when I got my green card, I was damn lucky because it was before that. Okay.
Yeah. And another question back there, I think.
Is there a fee associated with this sponsorship?
Is there a fee affiliated with the sponsorship? For like, if you marry a US citizen, do they have to, yeah. There's what we call the public charge requirement, and that you have to show you have enough money to support your new spouse and maybe their children or whatever. And that's a whole other area that we could talk about, because this administration is, you know, raising the bar on public charge, so more and more people will not qualify because they don't make enough money or because they accept government benefits. So that's another problem that people have to overcome to get a green card. Question up here in the front.
Can you just explain what the asterisks for Burma and Ethiopia are?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Okay, so there's an asterisk there because the administration ended TPS for Burma. However, the effective date is TBD because they did not do it right.
correctly.
And so because they didn't follow the process, there's an automatic extension. And so I believe that it's a 6-month extension, and so the effective end is TBD.
And a lot of these are being litigated, and that's a whole other area we could talk about, is how the courts have sort of become, you know, immigration enforcers or deniers or whatever, in terms of stopping some of these things or not. There's a question in the back.
Do people from those countries, do they have any recourse now that the TPS was terminated?
So the recourse that they may have is to apply for something else. And that something else can be asylum. And if we have time, I can talk more about that.
Yeah. Question.
Are other countries taking these people in? How are other countries responding?
So the question is, are other countries taking these people in? And the quick answer is no. I mean, if you're from El Salvador and TPS has been terminated, people have to go back to El Salvador, you know. So it's a problem. Question way in the back.
I was going to ask, El Salvador, is TPS still in effect for them, or has it been terminated?
There's litigation right now about that. Basically, all the TPS designations are being litigated. So, okay, let's talk about travel ban and refugee restrictions. President Trump has initiated either a partial or total travel ban on 19 countries. And he also lowered the annual cap on refugee admissions to 7,500, which is the lowest on record. Here's an example of someone who got refugee status and came into the United States from Sudan. Now he's studying to be a lawyer. But if he were trying to come in today as a refugee from Sudan, he would not be able to, both because of the travel ban, which is directed to Sudan, as well as the overall cap. So let's talk a little bit about asylum, Tanya, and go through some of the requirements.
Thank you. Okay, so I mentioned that someone who is losing their TPS status might be able to apply for something else. They might be able to, if they have a romantic partner, be sponsored by their spouse, or they might have a fear of returning to their country and they might apply for asylum. We have an international obligation not to return people to countries where they may be persecuted. And this came out of the 1951 Convention related to the status of refugees. What came out of that is this core principle known as non-refoulement, and you'll forgive me, it's a French word.
Non-refoulement.
Thank you.
It's a one word of French I know.
See why he's here? And the concept is that we will not force refugees to return to a place where they are unsafe. Now, to qualify for asylum, you have to already be in the United States or arrive at the border and meet the definition of a refugee. And bear with me, it's a pithy definition. Okay, it is a person who is unable or unwilling to return to their home country and cannot obtain protection in that country due to past persecution or well-founded fear of being persecuted in the future, and this part is key, on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. And our Congress incorporated this definition in 1980. So it wasn't until the Refugee Act of 1980 that we made it law. And of course, this administration has made it even harder to win asylum. What I tell people when they come to me and they say they want to apply, I tell them it is within your right to apply, but it's at the government's discretion it's at the judge's discretion whether you will win asylum.
One famous book calls this refugee roulette, because these categories are pretty nebulous. What does membership in a particular social group mean? And also it varies by immigration judge. Some immigration judges, until recently, were pretty liberal about granting asylum, and others were very restrictive. And so it was depended a lot on which judge you got, in addition to having a good lawyer like Tania.
Now, I do have I don't know if we have time, I have an example.
Sure.
Just to maybe bring it home a little more. This is an example of someone who had a fear of female genital mutilation. So it's a person from an African country who came on a visa with her 4-year-old daughter to accompany their spouse, who was here on a student visa. Now, she had spoken out publicly against female mutilation or female cutting, escaped female mutilation when she was in her country, and now has a well-founded fear of returning due to fear that her daughter will be subjected to female cutting. Now, she has family who've expressed that because she did not get cut, her daughter must get cut in order to break a tribal curse. So you have the client who's outside of her native country. She's unwilling to return due to a well-founded fear. And we were able to support that with objective reports that showed that female genital cutting is a leading cause of death for girls in this country. This country has 75% prevalence of female genital cutting for women between the ages of 15 and 49. And in particular, she identified as a Christian, and because she identifies as a Christian, Christians in this country are a religious minority, and there are tensions between Christians and Muslims, which resulted in violence against Christians. So we were able to, what we argued is that because of her known feminist political opinion against female genital cutting, and because of her membership in a particular social group as women of a certain ethnic group who have not been cut, and because of her minority Christian religious beliefs, she deserved asylum.
And what happened?
It's now has been submitted to the asylum office and will be waiting for maybe 5 or more years before she gets an interview.
Yeah. Questions?
Yeah, I'm curious, so the United States, how bound are we under international conventions of like this 1951?
Well, the question is, are we bound by this international convention? And in this case, the answer is yes, because we incorporated it into our own domestic law in the Refugee Act of 1980. So it's not just some, we should be good international people. It's because our U.S. law requires us not to return people if they have a well-founded fear of persecution. Great. I'll skip that one, and now let's try to talk about, well, what are the solutions? We know we have a broken system. What can we do? And to me, at least, any successful comprehensive immigration bill has to have three elements. I call them the three elements of the stool, because if any one of them doesn't exist, the stool is going to topple over. I call them the three E's. Expanded visas, which means both creating temporary visa programs that address our work needs and reducing the current backlog of permanent green cards. The second is earned legalization, which means offering a realistic and fair opportunity to the estimated 11 million people here who are unauthorized so that they can earn green cards over time. And the third E is enforcement. We need to have enforcement. We need to have control over our borders, but it needs to be smart. We need to be going after terrorists and smugglers, not pizza deliverers or Uber drivers, etc. But, Tanya, why do we have this slide up?
Okay, well, this country has been debating and coming to a standstill when it comes to comprehensive immigration reform. You had in 2013 a Senate bill that came close. However, it did not pass in the House, and so it never became signed into law.
And I'll just finish it here. So, as German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck once said, there are two things you should never see being made: sausage and legislation. And it's true for both of them. I've been involved in Congress, helping to draft immigration bills. They're notoriously complex. And then it goes to the staff, and then the staff change it, then it goes to the floor, and the floor changes it, then it goes over to the Senate, and the Senate changes it, and then they have a conference committee, and the conference committee changes it, and by the time you get done, you have no idea of what they've done. And that Senate bill, it was 1,200 pages long. Do you think the senators actually read that bill? No, of course not. So that's the nature of our congressional system. I want to talk about the economic benefits of immigration. National Academy of Sciences report finds that immigration provides a net economic benefit to the United States. As just one example, in 2024, the more than 1 million international students studying at colleges and universities in the United States contributed $39 billion to the economy. Undocumented immigrants do pay taxes, particularly Social Security taxes. And all of us over 65, we're worried about the Social Security system continuing before we die. Social Security is being propped up right now by the Social Security taxes that undocumented immigrants are paying, because they hope that someday they'll be able to qualify for Social Security even though they're undocumented right now. So there's a lot of good economic reasons why we should have immigration. But in the meantime, we've got fewer tourists coming to the United States, a decline in international students coming to the United States, adverse economic impact from the loss of immigrant workers, etc. So effectively, even though we don't have a physical wall all the way across the US-Mexico border, we have an invisible wall that has been created. It makes it even harder for people to come through our system. So Tanya, why don't you put us out on a good note about what we can do to change the system, so we can all go out on a happy note.
Thank you. Yes, so I've been pointing out that there are pieces of legislation, there are acts in New York State that you can write to your representatives to help pass. One of them in particular I'm very fond of is the Access to Representation Act. And that is in New York State. It would ensure the right to counsel for immigrants at risk of deportation and who cannot afford a lawyer.
Because right now, the immigration is considered civil, not criminal. So the Sixth Amendment makes sure, guarantees that you have the right to an attorney if you are charged with a crime. But if you are deportable, that's considered a civil violation, and you don't have that automatic right to an attorney, and many immigrants cannot afford an attorney, and there are not enough pro bono attorneys like Tania to be able to help them. So this act, a New York State act, if it were to be enacted in New York State, would appropriate money so that we would have enough immigration attorneys to help people in deportation proceedings.
And finally,
Can you make sure we get this information about these acts so that we can support them?
Yeah, I think the slides will be available afterwards, and I should go to the right slide so you see it. There we go. There's the slide. There's the act on the slide, and Anna Kellis and.
yeah, you can come to me. I can give you the names of each of the acts that I mentioned if you want to write that down afterwards. Yeah. And I would like to also say one more thing. So you may be wondering how I am able to do the work that I do, the work that I would do, quite frankly, for free. But how I'm able to, New York State, we are, you could say, lucky, because we are one of the few states in the country who has somewhat reliable funding to provide limited support services in the legal area for immigrants. And how I was hired under a grant called it's called the ONA grant, Office for New Americans, and my organization shares this grant with Catholic Charities, where Sue Shafee is still helping immigrants in all sorts of capacities. And so if you indulge me with a shameless plug for making donations to my organization, so we can keep doing the work that we're doing. And some of your donations, if you feel so inclined, can go towards things like helping people apply for fees to applications. This administration has imposed new fees. It came along with that one big beautiful bill act. And so things like, we were talking about asylum. The initial application used to be free to apply. It is now $100 to apply, and for every year that it is in court, you on your anniversary, you are charged, you have to pay $100.
So if you're pending for 5 years, that would be $500 before you find out if you win asylum. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Tanya, but do you remember what the current naturalization application fee is? Isn't it like $1,400?
$1,440.
Yeah. So it's expensive for people to go through the process, and if you want to contribute to try to help people with that, you can contribute to Journey's End. And there are forms on the table over there, right?
That's right.
So you can take it away with you and write out a check. And let's turn it over to some questions. We had one in the back there.
And I think too, for work permits now, that it's like a $550 fee.
Yes.
Correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know a family who submitted it and they're waiting to hear back.
Yep.
But their asylum cases until like end of next spring. I mean, is there a chance that they could like have spent that money on the work permit and not get it, or?
Okay, so when we talk about a work permit under asylum, so you apply for asylum and then the person has to wait 150 days before they can then put in an application for a work permit. And by law, USCIS has to grant you a work permit after 180 days from when you applied, so 6 months. And then while your case is either in USCIS or before the court, you are allowed to live and work here until you get a final decision on your application.
But it does not make you legal. It's not a
does not.
legal status, so
It
you
does
could
not.
be picked up and put into
You're
deportation.
always subject to deportation, correct?
Yeah. Yes, question over in the back.
Tanya, what is the current fee for a green card?
It depends on what kind of green card you're applying for, employment-based, family-based, diversity, but it's generally hundreds of dollars.
Well, my green card, the last time I renewed it, and it ended this July, was $400-something.
Right.
And I'm Canadian, so,
Well, you get a discount, you get the Canadian discount. Great. Question way in the back there.
I heard at one point the Trump administration say that naturalized citizens might be stripped of their citizenship.
Yes.
Is there a possibility that could happen?
oh,
Yes.
hell yes.
It's called Operation Janus because Janus was two-sided, and they're saying some people who got naturalized may have done so fraudulently.
Yes.
In the past historical context, this happened for people who maybe lied after World War II and came into the United States and failed to reveal that they were really Nazi concentration camp guards. And then they found out, later on that they were guards, and so their naturalization was revoked. Trump wants to expand that kind of post-naturalization investigation to see whether there are many cases of that kind of fraud. I doubt there are, but certainly naturalized citizens are worried that that operation may be expanded. Jared.
How are immigration judges selected, and how long are they appointed for?
Good question. Immigration judges are not elected. They are appointed by the Justice Department. And many administrations have wavered in terms of whether they should find immigration judges from the immigration attorney pool or from the government pool. This administration has selected more immigration judges from the Department of Justice enforcement attorney side. They're even bringing in some military judges from the Department of Defense to adjudicate immigration cases, even though they've not had any training on immigration law. So it can be quite a gauntlet, and that's why I call it refugee roulette. It really may depend on what kind of judge you get. Yes, in the front here.
This isn't a question. I have stickers that people can have to stand in solidarity with immigrants. Do you mind if I just distribute?
Sure, go right ahead.
And so we are the Solidarity Immigrant Group. Can just hand some of these back. There aren't enough for everybody, but we'll
It's a lottery, like our diversity.
And it only takes them if you're going to display them proudly somewhere, either on your bumper. There's bumper stickers, and there's small stickers. So this is the Immigrant Solidarity Group. And we also have the sign to say, we stand with immigrant families. We welcome immigrant families, the lawn signs that you've been seeing everywhere. And so, all I wanted to say.
Before we go back to questions, one thing I just remembered, there are good organizations locally, like your organization and others, to help immigrants. So for example, Ithaca Welcomes Refugees. It's been around for 10 years, and they help people, not just refugees, but people who need help, and you can make a donation to them. There's the Tompkins Learning Partners, which provides English as a second language learning for people who need it. There's ODE, Open Doors English, which allows English people who don't speak English to learn English. So there's a lot of ways that you can get active locally to help immigrants and make this a welcoming community.
Yeah, and the Immigrant Solidarity Group is working in partnership with the Catholic Charities.
Yeah.
We're partners with them.
Yes, over you.
I just wanted to clarify, because I think I missed the answer. So someone who has applied for asylum has evidence of that and also has a work permit, but during that process they could be picked up and deported?
Yes, I'll give you an example. Our Cornell Asylum Clinic represents a woman. We started her case in 2018. She had an asylum hearing. She's from Guatemala, an abused individual. She lost her case at the immigration judge level, but then we have applied to an administrative appeals board called the Board of Immigration Appeals. That is still pending. She has the asylum application pending. She had a work permit. She was working at the nutrition bar factory in Cato, New York, where there was a raid in September. And they picked her up, and she said, you know, okay, you can detain me, but don't deport me, because I've got children, and I don't know what to do about them. They ignored her. They deported her to Guatemala. Luckily, we got the New York Times involved, and the New York Times did a front page story about her case, and I said, okay, we'll bring her back to the United States. But she's still in detention in Texas, not back home with her 3 children. So this is happening, unfortunately, all over. Other questions? Yes, in the red there.
I have a question about one of the previous slides you showed. It was related to the different kind of visa and the permit to work or not, depending on the kind of visa you have. This is a personal curiosity, okay? Because I don't understand which is the principle that allows some category to work, some other not. Personally speaking, I'm a J visa holder, and also what shocked me when I applied for the authorization to work, I'm a J2, so I'm a spouse of a J1, so a student researcher, and the principle that allowed me to have the work authorization permit was that my husband was able to pay for my experience, but I want to work only because I want to grow in my career. Okay, it's okay. It's a nice thing, but I don't know. I didn't understand properly the fact that I have to demonstrate that my husband can pay for me, and I want to earn money just because I want to tax. It's the principle that is not very clear to me.
So nothing about immigration is clear. But I put that in this special cases category where sometimes you can work and sometimes you cannot. J are for exchange visitors, where somebody comes to the United States to learn a special skill, and then they maybe go back. And in that case, we do allow their spouses, which we call J2s, to work in the United States. But some of the other categories, like H1, H1B workers, tech workers, for example, if they have a spouse, that spouse is categorized as H4. They're not allowed to work. So it really varies by category, and often when I used to do consultations, I would ask not just about the principal person, but about the family member, so I could determine if they, maybe the spouse wanted to work, I would say, oh, you really want to be a J, not an H, or something like that. So you really have to think about the whole family to determine what is the best immigration strategy for that family. Yes? Did you have a follow-up question?
No, because so there is no principle that guides...
Principle? Guiding principle? No, not in immigration law. Yes.
Yeah.
In what category are agricultural workers?
Okay.
Do they know how to gain that status, or do the people that hire them on their farms?
Okay, we do have a special category for foreign agricultural workers. It's called H2A. And for that, it's usually that the farmer will work with a labor contractor and will tell the labor contractor, I need 10 people to pick my apples in Wayne County, and the labor contractor will say, I can find 10 workers for you in Mexico or wherever, and then they have to go through a special process, and then they get a temporary visa. It's good, usually just for 10 months, to be able to come into the United States. So it's a temporary visa, and then they have to go back, and if they like the employer and the employer likes them, maybe the employer will sponsor them again the next year. But it's a hard process, and that's why so many farm workers in the United States are undocumented. Way in the back with the beard.
Could you say something about the legal rights of somebody in an authorized stay status while waiting for adjustment of status?
Oh, so the question is, are you in an authorized stay while you're waiting for your green card to be approved, for example? Yes. And again, it depends. So say, for example, you have an H-1B visa, your employer has sponsored you because you're a tech worker, and then the employer sponsors you for a green card. and you're waiting for that green card to come through. That is a period of authorized stay. So unless you commit a crime or something, they cannot pick you up and put you into deportation proceedings. By contrast, if you are undocumented and apply for asylum, you can get a work permit, but that doesn't prevent immigration from picking you up and putting you into immigration removal proceedings. So this concept of authorized stay is very murky, and it varies depending on the category that you are in. Over here.
So the authorized stay, would that apply to somebody who married a U.S. citizen and was waiting for their green card? Are they allowed to work?
Yes, they can get a work permit, but again, they may not be able to actually get the green card in the United States because they entered illegally, so they may have to go back to their home country to pick it up, and by doing so, they may be subjecting themselves to this 10-year bar.
Right, I don't think they entered illegally. I mean, she got married and then they applied immediately for her.
Again, they probably should consult with an experienced immigration lawyer to sort of understand what their opportunities are.
Thousands of dollars.
Okay, that's the other problem, you know, so not all immigration attorneys are reputable, unfortunately. And so you want to make sure that you find an immigration attorney that has experience in your type of case. In the second row there.
Yeah, just a follow-up about immigration judges. Could you say a little bit more about them, because they do have to have legal training? I mean, they're not like justice of the pieces in the local.
They do have to have legal training, and until this administration, they also had to have immigration training. But this administration is bringing in some military judges to handle immigration cases, even though they don't have immigration training, and that's being challenged in court right now.
Is there an attempt to increase the number of immigration judges, or is that another thing that is not by the way?
I mean, it's so complicated. There were about 750 immigration judges under the Biden administration. But if you think there's 3 million cases, and you do the math, that's like several thousand cases per judge. And so that's simply bad. And then the Trump administration fired a lot of pro-immigrant immigration judges, and now is hiring anti-immigrant attorneys as immigration judges, and also bringing in military judges. That's right.
The H-1B visa, $100,000 fee. In the description of that fee, it said that some companies don't have to pay that with special conditions. Is there any clarity on those special conditions? Is this a handshake kind of deal?
There are no clarification, no regulations that say what that means. A lot of colleges and universities think that they should get one because, you know, they can't afford to pay an extra $100,000 to bring in a postdoc to Cornell. Rural hospitals are saying that they should be exempt. Thank you, my knife. Because they can't afford an extra $100,000 to bring a doctor to upstate New York. But so far, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has not given any guidance on what that is. Also, the $100,000 fee in general is being litigated.
It is. So this could be read as coercion, right? Like, if you company do X, Y, and Z for me, Trump administration will waive this $100,000 fee.
I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't put it past this administration.
And the other piece of this is that, you know, this is for the H-1B visa is to hire people, international people with college degrees.
Correct.
And international people often come to the United States for a college degree to get a job in the United States for however length of time. Sometimes it's to get a job in the United States for a short term as part of their professional development to then go elsewhere. Sometimes it's the wish to stay. But Trump last week said, I love international students in the United States. I want them here.
It's very contradictory. It all depends on what day you hear something from Trump. So, Jerry.
How likely is it that Elon Musk will be denaturalized?
As long as he stays in Trump's good graces, it will not happen. But he's a case of somebody who came in as an international student, but before he graduated, he started working on one of his first startups. So technically, he violated his F1 international student visa and could have been deported and could have been barred from getting a green card. But because he's Elon Musk, he's able to get citizenship. So, although they may be going after other naturalized U.S. citizens, I don't think they'll be going after Elon Musk. You want to?
I have to say that you'll start to hear the closing announcements. The library closes in about 15 minutes, so we probably need to wrap it up so the staff can start to close the library. I'm sorry, it's a really great. This happens with every one of these programs. The questions are so fantastic, and the discussion, and we all learned so much. Thank you so much.
Sure. So we'll stop now, but if you have individual questions, you can come on up and we can answer them.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Pardon?